90 years.
Thank you very much, Dr. Manus Chandaria. Our hosts, the Association of Kenyans in the Diaspora, this eminent person sitting here, Ndugu Bishar, my friend Mutua, Mama Blue Economy. These last two that I've not named, we share a ritual. Every year, we meet at Cheviches, Barack Obama's golf course. It's a ritual I like to keep, that we meet in Maryland and think of our country from afar. Shem, thank you very much for the opportunity. Ladies and gentlemen, I am not in any way better than you in deciding how you're going to spend your money. So the next few moments, I'm not going to tell you where you should put your money in Kenya. But I just thought that I will share, think very loudly, my sense of the state of play in the world, in the way it impacts on judgments about investment in Kenya, and then challenges in Africa, and then end off with a few musings about our country. Globally, of course, you know that there are a number of uncertainties that have emerged, principally related to two things. One is the return of economic nationalism. That very many countries, mainstream democracies, there is a rising anger among vulnerable middle classes who have this sense that they are losing out, that globalization is transferring resources, is rewarding others more than it rewards them, and they think that erecting walls around yourselves, both physically and figuratively, returning to the sense of a national economy, is a solution that will give them comfort. At another level is a global challenge coming from what some of us are calling a technology cold war. A new competition between US and China on the technology frontier, which eventually will impact the allocation of global value chains, the roots and components of manufacture that have become very important in our industrial strategies, particularly those of us in light manufacturing. Let me just say a few things about these two, and then I'll try to come closer home. You see, back in 1998, Bill Clinton announced a new global policy for the US. He called it pivoting to the East, declaring that China was now a strategic partner of the US. Basically, for the first time since the Second World War, America was describing China as a friend. And it was not because they have fallen in love with the Chinese. It's mainly because at the time America decided to draw the main lesson from the collapse of communism in Eastern Europe to be that a massive dose of capitalism is the best gravedigger of communism. That if we bring China in from the cold and allow it to join the trading community, it will start having rich people, a growing middle class, will find that they have to push the country towards capitalism, towards democracy. And then they will share part of the burden of global governance. So America was trying to bring China in, but not for altruistic reasons. That's why America was a major facilitator for China to join the World Trade Organization in 2001. 20 years later, what has happened? The strategic partner started being described a few years ago as a rival, as a competitor. And in 2018, the Vice President of the United States declared China an adversary, an enemy of the US. Why? The experiment to grow capitalism in China through bringing it from the cold has been miraculously successful. But capitalism grew, the Communist Party became stronger. So part of the equation has worked. But the worst part, which you thought would disappear because of success on the capitalist side, has not worked as expected. So you get to a point where opening up globally, which was driven by America, is demonstrating that China can play the American game better than America. And a fear that China will overtake America technologically starts America, first of all, in tightening Chinese access to American technology. You might mistake some noises like America all of one sudden does not want international trade. No, America is dependent on international trade. But the reality is a cold where you are fearing, unless something is done, the rising sun of the East is going to overrun us. Why is this something I'm starting off with when I'm talking to you? America is imposing tariffs on Chinese merchandise to slow down Chinese benefit from American market. So far, it has been on technology enterprise like GTZ and Huawei, and stopping Chinese innovators from accessing American technology. But maybe it's a bit too late in the day. I've just been at an international conference in Shenzhen, which is the home of the Chinese dream. If you go to Shenzhen, their motto is very much the origin of what is called China Strategy 2025. 20 years ago, we wanted to be the manufacturers of the world. Make for them. We have succeeded. Today, we want to be creators of the world. We don't want to innovate, buy somebody's technology. We want China to create the technology. And that's the goal of Agenda 2025. So America Great Again is an American industrial policy to contain, to rein in a resurgent China. We as an African continent, our main export other than traditional agricultural produce is the set of things we sell under AGOA to America. Textiles, handcrafts, Southern Africa, cars, others, petroleum. But if you look at what we have been selling under the AGOA from this country for the past 20 years, you find something. We import canvas from China, we cut it, stitch it, rules of origin to say reduce how much component must be imported from other countries. So we remained comfortable at 35% benchmark at our input. If we had been forced at the time, we'll be growing cotton, automating textile making. Textile jobs are coming back to Georgia, where they had gone out because of the cost of labor. Robots can now do the work that labor was to do. But the second and importantly, at first it may be direct hit on China, but I can see America opening up existing agreements to say China cannot come into our domestic market through the back door. If you are going to export anything under preferential access to American market, you must have at least migration. In spite of all the xenophobic propaganda around the world, the largest number of Africans migrate to Africa. Yes? The largest number of Africans, we must start also identifying social issues of attention for the migrants. But there's also another thing that came through. When you think about Africa, I'm sorry, here I digress from the common preferred knowledge around this continent. New Africans are getting into the labor market. Where do we find the capacity to guarantee a generation? They have very limited investment in democracy. Challenges than the previous generation. It must worry us. However well we invest in a country because of the promise of hope, if we cannot create livelihoods for the young men and women who are coming out of colleges, event where governments have started to pay attention, people purchase from them without going through myths. And I can tell you this, I have not discriminated in favor of Kenyans. The recruiting team has 2 people from my organization and 5 people from Alibaba. And all the applications are done online. Luckily, unluckily for some countries, when the government advertisement, they send the names of civil servants in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. But this space is happening. Last week, as mentioned earlier by my brother Bishar, I hosted the first e-commerce week for Africa in Gibiri. And if you just see the phenomenon that's happening, you'll say to yourself, step back. We have had the narrative one line of investment. It's not a bad line of investment. But entrepreneurs can never invest in the same time every year, all of them. then they stop being entrepreneurs. Some like villagers, when you also open a stall next to them and sell tea leaves. To me, to be risk takers, and I've challenged the Kenyan business community, and I spoke to the club, they call it the 40 club, the billionaires or at age 40 club. I said, look at the average rich Kenyan businessman. Many of them inherited or bought into enterprise, for example, importing semi-processed Malaysian cooking fat, palm oil, finishing it off to make detergents or cooking fats. This was done by the grandfathers. It was brought here because the Second World War Germans stopped the supply of those things from Europe, so they were intercepted to satisfy the colonial middle class by making it locally. We want the next level of entrepreneurs to say, what is the space of delusions? There is no honor in being a giant among dwarfs. You are in a situation where your traditional comforts are being shocked. Until Magufuli came along, global private capital was more excited about Tanzania and Kenya. It is slowing down. For many of us, what are you saying? We are seeing a country translate quantitative expansion into qualitative transformation. Ethiopia is on the brink of liberalized telecoms and financial markets. But it's doing that when it has built capacity to be locally competitive in the region. You have just completed building a road that can take a Ferrari from Nairobi to Addis Ababa. That road, how much are we prepared for merchandise to be heading north? If we're not, it will be a route for merchandise to head south. The challenge that is before us is not how much profit I can make personally, but how can we have a conversation when government realizes responsibilities of a historical moment, that we're in a moment where we make it, all the gains and pretensions of being ahead of others will be reversed in a very disastrous way. We're at a moment where it is very difficult. The conversation politically is not adequately addressing this. We constructed a constitutional architecture that is too expensive for our size of economy. The thousands of MCS, the MPs who can take whatever amount of money they want. I live in the city of Geneva, where all the time I have Kenyan MPs and senators present. An MP from the Kenya Party, this is no way to run a village. The reality is, we have erected a monster. We must borrow money internationally to pay debts of consumption, to pay recurrent expenditure. But the discourse in politics is hand over more money to the devolved units. I come from Western Kenya. If you go today, they are entertaining guests in a neighboring country. Those investments are taxpayer money. I told you this is a narrative I will not give before, known as other than Kenyan. You are some of our best. You must take some responsibility, share the burden of how we are going to correct this. But no, as a country, we only care about one ritual, a ritual of democracy. At every 5 years, we all don our traditional native garb and head to the mountains for a bout of idolatry, worshipping idols in the name of tribal promise. That time we don't talk about an agenda, we don't talk about stability, we don't talk about the future of our children and their education. When we come back from the mountain, always limping with self-inflicted wounds, exhausted, we start saying, what have we done? And the next 4.5 years is a narrative of self-immolation and figure pointing. When we recover from it, we're preparing, ready for the next round. This country cannot afford the complacency of thinking that democracy is an end for it. We took on democracy as a means. We need a narrative. We need a narrative that puts the next generation at the core of what to do. We need a narrative that says foreign investment. if you are going to invest, for example, in an infrastructure project in Kenya, to make it attractive to you, we will team up with the government of Kenya to give investment insurance. And some of our money goes into easing the burden for you in that investment. When you buy market access on the retail market, you always pay a high price, just like anything. If you buy on the wholesale market, you always get the best deal. As a diaspora group, you have the capacity to demand of Kenya government that since we are the main source of foreign investment in Kenya, we want the government and its development partners to de-risk our investment in Kenya. They can't afford not to attract you to bring your money. But you have to play on the basis of your strength by knowing what you are asking for. If you just want to ask for ensuring that the land you want to buy and build on is not being sold by a crook, they can give you that assistance, but that is not important to this country. That's important to you. That's important to your ego. That's important for a family, that you have a place which will make you come back and bury them here. But that is not creating the next million jobs that this country needs urgently to create. Sorry, I didn't mean to be preaching. I just meant to say we are at a difficult time. The traditional economy is basically on its deathbed. And new dynamics are informing international action. You are some of our best. Let the directions of your investment and your demands for security be in the direction of investing in sustainability, in the new areas that breathe life and hope in the young, underemployed, existentially challenged men and women of this country. Thank you for your kind attention.